Hi, and welcome to this edition of Coffee with the Cop, Miami Children's Initiative's opportunity to bring to you, our watching, viewing, and listening audience, an opportunity to get a better look, a better understanding of who's in place as it relates to law enforcement. As you've seen in the previous episodes, we've highlighted and spoke to everyone from Troy Walker, head of the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, the head of FIU, Public Safety. We've had many others from North Miami Beach, but today we're coming a little bit closer. We have the pleasure of having Chief Larry Juriga, the Chief of North Miami Police Department. Welcome, Chief.
Thank you so much for having me. It's wonderful to be here.
Listen, let's have our ceremony coffee with the cop, sir. Welcome, sir.
Cheers,
Welcome.
cheers.
So, listen, I've got to be, let me start from the beginning, at least as it relates to me knowing and seeing such a stately man as yourself. In 2012, I took a job in North Miami at the North Miami Chamber of Commerce. As a matter of fact, I was recruited and brought from the Tampa Bay area because Miami was my home, but I decided I wanted to try something different. And in maybe my first 2 to 3 months, every month we would have the Chamber of Commerce luncheon. But one of the features was to highlight the Officer of the Month. And one of the first officers I got a chance to highlight and put in that North Miami publication was Larry Juriga. So, Mr. Juriga, tell us a little bit about yourself, because obviously you've had a stellar career in law enforcement. As again, my first few months, I was already getting a chance to know the kind of work you're doing. So who's Larry Juriga?
Well, thank you. So glad to be here with you. Thank you very much. And it was a pleasure to meet you back in 2012. We were so fortunate to have you join the Chamber of Commerce, and now it's great to work with you again in the community. So Larry Juriga, I'm a blessed man who's had a wonderful family that takes great care of me, great friends who I can engage with, and in regard to the police department, I have such a fantastic team that I've been able to work with all these years. But I'm a father, I have 3 wonderful daughters, I'm a husband, hardworking wife, I'm a son. My parents live in Broward County and still 50 years old, and they're still looking out for me.
Listen to that.
Taking good care of me and checking on me routinely. And currently I'm honored to serve as the police chief in the city of North Miami and work with so many great residents. It's just, it's an honor to serve.
So what led you to a career in law enforcement? What was that drive that brought you to this place?
I always enjoy working hand in hand with community members, mostly children, as a coach or a camp counselor. And then I had a fantastic role model. My father was also a policeman at the city of North Miami.
Okay.
And I was born in North Miami, so that was.
So the uniform's black, so I can't say blue blood, but it's
blue. It's a dark blue.
It's a dark blue. Blue blood. Okay.
Yes, many people use that show and say, "Oh, that's you. That's the Juriga family."
Wow.
But my dad is was a fantastic police officer. He ended up as deputy chief in North Miami, but an even better father and better man. So what a great role model for me to have. And he just showed me the right way to go. He talked about first impressions. He talked about the importance of respecting everybody. Don't just respect the people that are up here in our society. Respect everybody.
So how long have you been with North Miami then?
I've been with the police department 28 years, and I had started in Parks and Rec, working as a camp counselor about 6 years before that.
Wonderful. So you have seen in over 30 years the change in North Miami. You've seen it go from, I remember when I stepped in the doors of the Chamber of Commerce as the assistant executive director, one of the things was, listen, in the 80s, in the 90s, North Miami was the place to live, and you had to have a certain income to live in certain in certain areas of North Miami, which is still the case when you look at Keystone Point and other places like that. It is serious pockets of economic wealth, right? but there also are tremendous are spaces where you have a serious dichotomy to that. It can be almost the have and have nots. How do you find balance in policing and being a chief of such a diverse community?
Well, it goes back to what I was mentioning about my dad. You have to respect everybody. Whether somebody's financially rich or not, everybody has wealth as a person. So we have to take that into consideration. And our engagement with our community, and we have an incredibly diverse community, but the one common denominator is people in North Miami are hardworking and they're so friendly. And really, I said it at the beginning, I am so fortunate and honored to be able to serve with them, because it's not just me, a policeman, it's me, part of the community, because they've accepted me.
So with that being said, of course, those who watch us know that we began this show in the wake of George Floyd, wanting to have real and relevant conversation with those law enforcement officers who have impact, influence, and how they police their communities and how they deal and respond to the community that they serve. And so with that being said, we have most certainly a niche or a draw to the community we serve, which is Liberty City. What would you say are some of those parallels that you've seen that exist across the board as it relates to North Miami and Liberty City? Would you say this commonwealth that you just mentioned, the wealth of human life, the wealth of commonality, what would you say, in addition to that, are some parallels that you see maybe potentially between Liberty City and North Miami?
Well, both of those areas, in South Florida as a whole, we have families who are committed to helping their loved ones. We have families who are working hard, families who are struggling with the challenges that we're facing in 2021. And it's not just the routine challenges that we've all seen, whether it's trying to make sure you have a good job, trying to make enough money so that you can put food on the table and make sure you have a roof over your head. But it's also the challenges of COVID-19 that are impacting us every day. And I don't know that everybody recognizes it, that you're not certain if you're going to have a job the next day. So many businesses have closed.
Yes.
Children not being able to go to school for all those months. I believe my daughter stopped going to school at the end of 2020, or the end of her sophomore year, didn't go her whole junior year, and now there was concern whether she'd make it to her senior year.
Through her senior year.
And so people in Liberty City, people in North Miami, they're going through these same struggles. Do I have a job tomorrow? Am I going to be able to afford food for the kids? Those type of things. And then also, you mentioned George Floyd. That brought to the forefront the concerns of many people in our communities. How do we trust policemen when, we look up in Minneapolis and in Minnesota and a policeman on film murders a resident.
Wow. Now that's bold to hear, Chief, for you to say that, because of course we've heard several opinions or thoughts about the maneuver that the police officer used. What are some of the measures to which you have put in place to ensure that those kind of what are some training methods that you've done as it relates to de-escalating, that it doesn't end in fatality under the North Miami policeman's watch?
Well, we, the police department, me as a police chief, we did the assessment after that. We had already done many assessments on use of force. And keywords, you said de-escalation. We push that and train our officers. There's nothing written that you have to continue to engage. There are cases when you have to engage with someone. And as law enforcement officers, you can't just run away. When something bad's happening, residents run away, citizens run away.
Right.
But we have to go there and we have to deal with whatever the situation is. But we always say you can, if possible, take a step back.
Right.
Give yourself some time to let things calm down with that individual. Put space between yourself and that individual, and that lets things de-escalate. And one of our greatest tools is our mouth. Just keep talking. That's what we tell our officers. Keep talking. Find something common between you and that person. They're upset at a spouse. They're upset because they lost their job. Well, hey man, you know, I hear some of our guys talk about, you think you're in bad shape.
Right.
I've been divorced 3 times. Are you kidding me? Just to
Right.
try and calm things down
Right.
and show that we have something, a common place between us.
Right, right.
Proportionality when we're talking about violence. If somebody's using a fist, well, you don't necessarily need to go to your gun. And these are things, be proportionate with the amount of violence that's coming towards you.
Interesting, very interesting point, because it seems as if the color of a person's skin can determine the use of force. And I don't know how, other than real conversation, as you mentioned off camera, in moments with circle of brotherhood and familiarity with people who don't look like you, don't live like you necessarily, would be the true method to which you can train the mind to untrain itself in what it's been taught. Because we know TV has played rumors, conversations that this certain group of people are the people who are committing the most crimes. Well, when you look at statistics, it is not necessarily the truth. It's just this is the group of people who are more likely handcuffed or arrested, but the rate of crime, and I may be wrong. I want you to jump right in and say, girl, you don't know what you're talking about. But it seems that the level of crime is consistent and universal, but it just seems like those who are of color seem to have the greatest amount of penalty. Am I wrong? Come on, talk.
Let's go
We
back.
got
Let's go to the
coffee
first
here.
thing. Let's go to the
Okay.
first thing you were talking about. Let's talk about, you were talking about
The untraining of the mind.
Correct. And the best way for us to be able to ensure that we're engaging the same way with everybody, our police department, our officers, is the comfort level. If you're engaging with someone every day, if we're engaging with our community, whether you're white, black, purple, green, if you're engaging with those people, you become more comfortable.
And so you have an element of community policing within North Miami.
We don't have an element of community policing in North Miami. We are community policing in North Miami.
It's universal.
It's not a section. It's not a particular unit. It is what our entire department does.
It's a part of the fabric of what
That's exactly what we do. And the sanctity, what we focus on is the sanctity of human life. We don't focus on the sanctity of white life, of Hispanic life, of black life. We focus on sanctity of human life, everybody's life.
Okay.
And so the engagement is so key, because engagement leads to discussions, discussion leads to understanding, and that doesn't mean agreement.
Right.
We're not going to agree on everything, but it leads to understanding, and that helps us through our engagement. Look, if you're more comfortable with someone, you're going to be more inclined to talk to them about things. If you're more comfortable with someone, you're not going to be afraid. And you see that I believe in many instances in law enforcement where we see videos that occur. Somebody's engaging with someone who they may not be comfortable with, and the scare factor comes into it. Whether the person that's being stopped by the officer, or the officer is scared. And it's terrible that sometimes it leads to those.
And that element of fear, as you mentioned, is on both sides. I just watched a movie. I had to fly for a family event, and so on the plane, I'm watching The Hate U Give. It was really an acronym for thug, but it's about a white officer who shoots a black young man who was really trying. He was pulled over in a routine, which we understand from many of the other cops that have sat in this seat, that is one of the most dangerous moments for both parties. Just a routine check or stop. Traffic stop. I couldn't say it right then. And so when you put in the fear of the officer that he may have, or he or she may have, and then you put the fear of the person who has been pulled over, and this young man was trying to impress a young lady in the car. And he goes, the officer tells him, put his hands on where he can see him, and he was checking his license. And he reaches in his pocket to grab a brush to impress the girl who's in the car, to show that he wasn't afraid, and the officer then shoots and kills him. And so in that moment, You saw the officer who he did a great job, the actor, portray the fear. You saw him realize he had regret, he had remorse. He really thought he had seen a gun. And the young man, of course, laid there. So in a scenario in that, when it comes to, I think, understanding what residents must do or what people must do in traffic stops and what happens with the police, it has to be education on both sides. How do you think, or what could be some methods that we could help officers? Because of course, if you're told to put your hands, in this new millennial generation, they're gonna ask you, why are you stopping me? They're gonna ask you a million questions as opposed to doing it. What are some tools that you can say to the viewing audience of what to do in a routine traffic stop? Because at the end of the day, we just want everybody to get home safe.
Amen.
I want the cop to get home safe, but I want the people to get home safe as well.
Amen. So let me start, if you don't mind, let me start with what the policeman should do. The policeman should, no need to rush up to the car. If you're concerned, the officer can wait for a backup. Use the various lights you have to light up the car. And I go back to this, communication.
Okay.
You can stand at the back of the car. Sir, ma'am, would you please roll your windows down just so I can see everybody that's in the car? I'm stopping you for, you ran the stop sign.
Right.
So then this person sitting in the car, they already have a little understanding, okay, I'm being stopped for a traffic violation. So that's relaxing this person. The officer has the opportunity to see in the car what's going on. You know, everybody has these dark tinted windows.
Yeah.
You know, my kids are asking me, my daughters are asking me, Dad, no, I need them darker. They don't have any tinted windows.
Right.
They don't, nobody, you need to be able to see out, and if somebody stops you, they need to be able to see in. That's just my own personal approach with my kids.
Right.
But so the officers need to be clear in their communication. I'm Chief Juriga. I'm stopping you because you ran a stop sign. May I have your license, registration, and insurance, please? And at that point, it already answers the first question you said, why are you stopping me?
Exactly.
So that takes that out of the equation right there. And for the young men and women who are out there, or even anybody that's stopped, my recommendation, trust me, I get stopped by policemen. So I just wanted to, nobody's perfect.
Right.
And when I get stopped, every window in my car goes down, and I put my hands right up on the steering wheel. That way that person is perfectly clear. I don't reach in the glove compartment. I don't look for my wallet at that point.
Because that's what happened with Philando Castile. He reached for his license as the officer had asked, but as soon as he reached for it, he shot the gentleman. So in this moment, you're saying, put your hands on the steering wheel, communicate every move you're about to make.
Correct. And, you know, putting your hands here, and I know it's easy for me to say, be polite, be friendly, but I demand that of my children. That's what I tell them. It takes an extra half a second to be polite. Sir, is it okay if I reach for my wallet? It's underneath the front seat right here. I'm gonna reach down here. Sir, my registration's in my glove compartment. Is it okay if I reach there? Just that little bit. Nobody wants to be stopped. Nobody. My kids have been stopped. My daughter's been given a ticket. My wife's been stopped. It happens. So I just want it to be, it's not like it's a specific thing that's only happening to you. I know it's individualized when we're getting stopped, but it happens across the country, across the world all the time.
I got you, but it seems to happen more and more in certain communities. But in moments like this, and as we are communicating, I think the realization of that is becoming, it's helping to reduce some of that. But I think you bring up a valid point about just be patient, let the experience happen, because at that moment, the cop doesn't need to be judge and jury, nor do the passenger or the person driving need to be judge and jury. Allow the court system, go through the process, because at the end of the day, we just want you to get home. Now, you can't talk for another municipality, but I know your neighbor, Biscayne Park, had a major issue as it related to kind of pulling over people of color, and they went through the whole matter of going through the news, and some shifts and changes happened in that police department. But to hear you say, just as a neighbor, that you've already made some choices, that North Miami won't have that reputation, to me, I'm going to salute you. And that you would see that all people are human. It's just, that's what it is. But how do you get around the Haitian and the language barriers in all that you do? Do you have more officers that are more reflective of the community? Are you guys learning those languages? Tell me some of the tools that you're doing to communicate better with your community.
Oui. Moi, huele, la oui.
Yeah.
So all of us are trying to engage with our community. I'm not very good with the language, but I'm working on it of various ways through teaching from some of our officers. But it's the engagement, the enjoying the cultural aspect of it, everything from the food to the dance, the celebration. If I could take just a second, one of my first times ever eating Haitian food, I said, wow, pork, I know what pork is, I can eat that. I ate a lot of that. They had chicken, so I ate a lot of that. And then they had this coleslaw. And so I took two big scoops of coleslaw, and it turned out it was pickles, and I took 2 huge bites.
Oh
and
my
by the time
you were on fire.
And everybody still talks about it, that I was sitting in the library and it was just sweat was pouring off of me. So, and now I know just a little bit, but the engagement with our community is key, and learning about the culture, learning about the things that are important. Today we're going to have a rally in front of our MOCA to address the concerns about the people who are coming over from Haiti, and they're over there at the border of Texas, and what our government can do and what we can do for the human rights of these people.
Well, I think your heart is being reflected in your speech today. Tell me what's going on, though. What are some initiatives happening with North Miami? Tell me, share with us what's going on. Just some future events, things that we can engage with. Let the community know what's going on.
Certainly. Well, we have many events that happen throughout the week and throughout the year. One of our weekly events, our police officers go out, and I join them each week. Every Thursday we go out and we do a community bike ride where we ride around and we wear long sleeve, lime green fluorescent yellow shirts, and on the back it says peace officer, and that's intentional. And some people come up to us and say, "What's a peace officer?" I said, "That's what we're about. We're peace officers. We're here to keep the peace. We're here to be peaceful." And so it's great. We ride around, and what a way to engage with the community. Driving in the car with the windows up because it's hot, you don't get to have as many conversations. And you should hear and see the number of thumbs up we get, people beeping our horns. And we oftentimes have our horse-mounted patrol join us.
And so what time of day is that?
We generally go out right around 10:30 in the morning.
Okay.
So there's tons of people out heading to and from work, engage with community members. We go by some of the schools. We visit with some of the residents over in different areas of our city. So you may see us when you're going to or from.
Okay.
But then we have different events with our police athletic league.
Okay.
Around Halloween, we're going to have a couple events going on the Friday and Saturday before Halloween, which is on Sunday. But the best way is reach out to our police department. Certainly, I'll give you some information.
Sure.
But you can go and check things out online for us.
Sure.
And just the community engagement. Hopefully, when things get a little better with the COVID, we'll have our cops and kids fishing, which is a fantastic.
Talk to us about that.
Fantastic way to engage. We've done it the past couple years, where many of our officers show up on a Saturday. We go out to the North Bay Shore Pier, and we have anywhere from 100 kids, dozens and dozens of kids, and some of the local businesses donate fishing poles. And
so can I bring some kids from Liberty City over?
Absolutely. We've had people do that. We've had other groups do that.
Well, we want to do that. When you guys get that up and going, we want to do that. And listen, I want to say to our Liberty City community and those who will be watching abroad that, Chief, you have absolutely put your actions, you've been more of an action man than a word man. And many of our community events we've had with the Miami Children's Initiative right there in Liberty City, you've shown up. I've seen you running out there with the kids. You helped with, anything, if it was running, if it was kickball, if it was face painting, whatever. And I want to tell you, for me, for our young babies to see police officers in a positive light, and those that look like them and those that don't look like them, care for them, means the world. And so I want to thank you for giving us a little moment, a little peek into Chief Juriga. It's nice to know that you're keeping the legacy of equity and inclusion for your police department, and that to know that you weathered the evolution of North Miami and how it continues to evolve, but you've kept the main thing, and that's the human thing, and I appreciate that. Anything in closing you'd like to share as it relates to inclusion, as it relates to police training, any of those last points you'd like to share?
Certainly, and you mentioned inclusion a couple times. Inclusion's part of what our police department's mission, total inclusion. It's so important. We get so many different perspectives when we include everyone, not just when we're talking about community members, but we're talking about within our police department as well. Total inclusion. And you mentioned the children. Young men and women, you are so important, and I want you to know that we're your friends. I know you see certain things on television. I know different things happen within the community, but we, the police officers, we are your friends. Parents, please, when you see us out on the streets or you see us in the grocery store, don't tell your kids, hey, if you do something bad, I'm going to have them take you to jail. Take a second and say, hey, why don't you go say hi to the policeman? Or walk over and say hello to the policeman. I promise you, we want to be your friend. We are your friends. We care about you. We love you. And we want you to succeed. Little mistakes that children make, and that's what I refer to them as, little mistakes. There's no reason kids need to go to jail for little mistakes. And all of us made mistakes as young men and women. And so we want to push prevention. We want to push education. We don't want to push apprehension. So
that means so much, because to know that at the state level, the new age limit is age 7, that a child could be arrested, because they said they just wanted to put something on the record books. But to know that you recognize from a chief perspective that why mar this child's life, let's have a conversation, let's get them the mental health and support that they need. Because really, as we talked about COVID, there's been an uptick in violence, but some of that is because people have been in closed doors and people are fighting mentally with dealing with this unseen issue or matter, in addition to losing jobs and not having support. So it's good to know.
Think how many things have closed, how many resources have closed down, how many outlets have closed down for our young men and women because of COVID. How many parks have closed? All the resources, all the support that we could normally give our young men and women, I think that might be a reason why we're seeing the uptick in violence. Besides all the uncertainty, besides all the stress, just the resources haven't been there. How long were parks closed?
Oh my goodness, right? I know I was trying to wrap up, but there's one point that just came to me.
Uh-oh.
And then I promise you guys,
They always wait till the end to ask the tough question. Here it comes.
No. So we know that with the Haitian community, there was a huge, a large, what was it? What was that Haitian gang called?
Zopound?
The Zopound, and I'm touching my mic. The Zopound. We've seen, so when you talk about over 28 years, you've seen this community. What are some last things that we can say to keeping the community safe? Because we know, we've had some spouts and, but things have kind of quieted down. What would you say when it comes to gang violence? What are some of your initiatives, and how are we keeping youth out of that, as you talked about the fishing piece?
Right, keeping our young men and women engaged. So if they're busy in sports, if they're busy in extracurricular school activities, if they're busy at the local church, if they're busy taking care of their grandparents, taking care of their family members, they don't have idle time that they can go and figure out a way to keep busy. And that's how I think gang members, pull some of our young men and women in, because they're looking around for some involvement. Well, I'm not involved in sports, I'm not involved in school, my family's too busy for me. So they look for a way to become involved. So we try to keep our young men and women engaged and involved. And you know, crime in North Miami is at a 50-year, almost a 50-year low. It's
Yes,
really,
it is.
It's really dropped considerably, but it's partially because of our policemen and women working so hard to work with the community. But a huge factor is the fact that our community members are picking up the phone and calling us. And I think that goes back to the building of trust. They're trusting us that we're going to come out and address things. They're not calling us after the crime happened. They're not telling people, yeah, this happened on Wednesday and it's Saturday. They're calling us and saying, this doesn't look right. And what I try to relay to our community members is, you all know your neighborhoods, you know your business, you know who's supposed to be in your neighbor's front yard, you know if your friends are out of town, you know if there's a new business owner next door to your business that you've owned for 30 years. So if something looks out of place, if it looks suspicious, call us up. If everything's fine, hey, we'll come by and say, hey, everything's A-okay.
Yes.
And one of the main things I need everybody to recognize, you don't need to give us a name, you don't need to give us a number. Just tell us where it's happening and we'll go by and we'll check it out.
Yes, yes. And I will say, Chief Juriga, you have been just that kind of chief, and you have been just that kind of police department. Well, we want to thank you for watching and joining us for this edition of Coffee with the Cop. It's been our pleasure to have Chief Juriga, the chief of the North Miami Police Department. For those of you who are watching, if you'd like more information, we're going to put up on the screen the information that you can contact Chief Juriga. If there is a contact number that they may reach out to you at the police department?
Certainly. 305-891-8111. 305-891-8111. 24/7. Call us if you need something, if you just need information, and we'll be more than happy to get back to you. If you want to chat with me, please do the same.
All right, sir. This has been our edition of Coffee with a Cop. Thank you for
Yes,
joining us.
Cheers.
And guys, have a great rest of your day.